Thank you so much. As committee members come up to ask a question or two, let me just pose a question to the panel, see who would like to answer. One of the big issues that we are grappling with as a committee is this issue that is the tension between what families seek, what they want, and what they might need to support themselves as parents in the many facets of the role of being a parent and being having a role in society, being a worker, caring for their own parents, for example, and what is offered by programs in their communities. And what we know from the scientific literature tends to work, right? Things that have an effect on children's well-being, for example. So when you think about your own work, about the services that you provide or that are offered in your communities, how do you sort of address that as far as what you offer about what families are seeking? How do you know what is the right thing to offer to specific groups of families, to individual families? Tammy, do you have a thought about that before we open it up to the group here in our audience?
Sure. I mean, I think it is a tension that sometimes feels very, very difficult to manage, only because programs are under increased pressure to demonstrate the extent to which their actions are based on evidence-based intervention strategies. So I definitely agree that it is a tension, and yet, as I listen to the rest of the individuals present, I think that this whole idea of building the right kinds of relationships that allow parents to connect in ways that put you in the position to support them by bringing forward information that may be informed by the science, but ultimately has to be processed through what people's experiences are and what makes sense for them. I know as a part of our work with parents, that relationship building process that we try to be very intentional about, we pride ourselves on listening to what families present as their sort of challenge and need. And as an organization, we work very hard to try and meet families where they have needs as a beginning point for serving them well, because we know when we do that, we demonstrate our understanding of needs from their perspective. For example, we get lots of, one of the chief challenges that families come to us wanting support around has to do with housing. The cost of housing in our community is very, very expensive, and across all human service providers, regardless of what the service is, if you're talking about youth programs, it really doesn't matter. The stress parents feel around being able to access affordable housing has an impact on their ability to engage emotionally with their children, and they're very much aware of it. And so our ability to work effectively with other agencies in the community to advocate and address needs in the area becomes a very important part of what you have to be willing to do, because I think people aren't going to engage with you if they don't believe that you understand the challenges that they face on a daily basis in trying to provide for their families. So it's a tension for sure.
Thank you, Tammy. Charles, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I did. I think for our community, Antelope Valley is 2,000 square miles wide. It's a large terrain, and while most of the city is populated off the 14 highway, families that live 20 miles to the east, if they had to take a bus to come into town, it takes them over an hour. So a lot of what we actually do with our organization is try to partner with agencies that are already out there so that we can bring the groups to the dads. So it's an opportunity for them to have to travel less. We meet in the evenings when we know maybe fathers are going to be home after work. We provide dinner because I don't want any excuses. And the dads themselves are actually the child care. So we always encourage them to bring their kids to the meetings, because then it's an opportunity for one, it's a selling point to mom that you can get rid of the husband and the kids for at least an hour to come and see me. I'm going to feed them, and then we're going to entertain them. But it's just an opportunity for us really to go out into the community and be more aware, be more alert about what's going on, and just coming to them makes it easier for them. So you cut out on the excuses.
So you've really thought through the needs of the folks that you're trying to draw into the program, both geographically and then what'll get them.
Actually, too. And what I've learned, especially with our children, is if I make it an opportunity for them to actually spend time with their kids, the kids then become my commercial. They're the ones that remember it's Wednesday night and we're supposed to go to Menfolk. Are we going to go? Because they know they're going to spend time with dad. And there's times where dad will show up with 2 or 3 kids, and so some of the other dads that maybe didn't bring their kids that time or whatever, we pass the kids around. So we all take an opportunity to help with do homework, or we'll have a meal time together. And it's that one time to spend time with dad that they normally wouldn't get.
Claire, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Claire Anderson. I work at Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago. I'm on the committee. And I'm intrigued, Mr. Ravi, of this notion of partnering with existing organizations, right? So part of what I think our charge is to understand what the evidence is around interventions that can support parents, or programs and services that have some evidence that they are helpful to parents. But what you're describing, if I understand correctly, is in some way an adaptation, perhaps, of partnering with existing programs that are delivering potentially some services that have an evidence base and some that don't. So part of what I grapple with is understanding the extent to which this might be a mechanism by which we really engage parents. Sometimes parents, as you said, aren't really interested in going to programs that are attached to a religious organization or a system of some description. So I'm curious about this balance that you seem to have found with getting parents to come to the work that you're doing and potentially stick with a program that is being offered by a system. So can you talk a little bit about how that engagement, how that parent leadership happens, and what the connection is to these larger systems?
So for one, it's an opportunity where, and Head Start is a great example. Head Start in my community, they service over 1,700 children for preschool, 0 to 5, some home-based, some center-based. That's where we got started. That's where I first met Head Start. It was my daughter, my youngest at the time, was going to Head Start. I was working nights, so being available during the day, I would walk with my wife and my child, and we'd go to school. I spent the first 2 months kind of just standing around because the teachers didn't know how to engage fathers. Their biggest thing was, Mr. Avila, could you put the water bottle, or could you take the trash out? But I noticed that as moms were coming in, they were talking to them, they were engaging them. When the dad would come in, they'd say, oh, hi, Dad. They didn't really learn their names. So that was my big pitch to Head Start, is how do we get your teachers more involved, more okay with having dads in the community, having dads in their classroom and volunteering. So that's how we got started with a lot of that, was really offering that opportunity and creating a system where now teachers, every year, we have a Father of the Year, a male role model of the year. So the teachers get to nominate one of the dads that's been in their classroom. They write a little paragraph about him. At the end of the year, I get all these submissions. We go through them and we rate one. They all get recognized, but we select one dad as Father of the Year, and we're on our 4th or 5th year doing that. It's just creating an opportunity where teachers now become more aware of dads also. It's been trying with some of the other organizations. I do have some organizations, they do evidence-based programs, and they outreach to moms, and they outreach to children, and I asked them about doing something for dads, and they just say, it's not our focus. It's not within our grant. So that's really an opportunity for me to then say, how about I create a group at your site, and it doesn't cost me anything, where we're inviting your dads to come in, and we utilize protective factors that then we can go over, and they help me develop questions that they want to target to their specific dads about the services that they offer. So those are the opportunities that we create for some of those organizations and how we get them to really partner and open up and being more opening about having dads coming into their groups.
Good morning. My name is Elena Fuentes-Affleck. I'm from the University of California, San Francisco, and I'm a committee member. I want to begin by thanking each of you for sharing your experiences and your recommendations. I want to ask a specific question to Al, because I was really struck by what you said about knowledge doesn't change people, but feelings do. And when I'm not here as a committee member, I'm a pediatrician, and so I work with a lot of families. I mostly interact with women and mothers, but sometimes I interact with fathers. So perhaps for Al and Charles, in terms of many of us work within large organizations and we try to serve families, and here we're talking about parenting, but how do we engage the family members who we don't see all the time? How do we link them to programs and systems that we represent that even if we're selling knowledge, perhaps we can get a feeling hook? But how do we leverage all of our talents and all of these perspectives to reach fathers, families who are sometimes busy, sometimes not as engaged, or don't believe that what we are trying to do will be helpful to them? So what recommendations do you have for leveraging all the experience that you have, but bringing it perhaps into a context that we're more familiar with?
Well, our program, we have people working in criminal justice, education, health and human services, and behavioral health, even in housing. And what we've done is that because of the diversity of the services that they offer, our position is basically this. And I'm doing this, and I'm coming from a counselor's point of view now. We try to say we want to give the parents the same message, okay, but each person use their own unique approach. But what the message we bring to them provides one purpose. And when I should do marriage and family counseling, I should say, what marriage is it that you have two separate individuals with their own distinct, their own personalities and blah, blah, this and that, but they have one purpose. So we want to give all of our tribal people the same purpose, and that is to strengthen families, to keep families together. We have people who have PhDs, who are people that have come in, who are really the grassroots that really bring the same message. We don't tell them how to do it because they know their people, like the people from Maine are different than the people on the Navajo Indian Reservation. They have different problems, they have different issues that they have to address, like travel or distance or whatever it may be. So we want to arm the people with the same message, with the same purpose. And so that's kind of how we've done it. We said that, but you use your own unique approach because you know your people better than anybody else. You know what their problems are, you know what their issues are. So that's the approach we've done. And that same message, same purpose, but you do it on your own. And we're there to give them assistance. We're there to help them out. But we want them to treat them like they know their people better than we do.
Thank you. Barbara?
Morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Barbara Rogoff. I'm a professor at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm on the committee. I thought it might be useful if we could take advantage of your experience with different organizations, because you span, I think you all have experience with other organizations besides your own. With some of the evidence-based organizations, it seems like there's some challenges with people wanting to be involved. And I imagine there's quite a bit of variation between the organizations that you represent and have experience with. I wonder if you could give us some idea of what you think is most helpful for parents wanting to be involved and keeping involved in some of the efforts to help them be parents.
Well, from my experience, parents wanting to be involved, I've always mentioned to the dads, I've always mentioned to even the organizations that I partner with, you're always going to have parents that want to come to everything that you're offering, and that's great, but most of the time those parents don't need it. It's the parents that aren't coming that we have to try to reach. So how do we do that? We create opportunities. So when I partner with an organization, for example, if I'm partnering with Children's Bureau, who does a lot of therapy for the children, and they're having an event, backpack giveaway, because we know the end of summer's coming and they're already planning for that. I asked them, can we do a barbecue? So can we come out? We're going to grill hot dogs and hamburgers, and as we want to invite the fathers to come out, we want to invite the men to come out. That's one opportunity. I partnered with another organization who works out of one of the neighborhood houses that's utilized as a resource event, and they were trying to figure out how to, after their grand opening, how do we get the community to start utilizing it? So it was summertime, so I said, well, let's do an ice cream social, but the trick is, we know the kids are going to come, they have to bring an adult with them, and if they bring a male adult, dad, grandpa, whoever that is, then we're going to also give them a raffle prize. So it's just an opportunity for us to really engage those families in the community, and always hold things in the afternoon or on the weekends when you know they're going to be available. So you avoid that. I have one organization. We were planning an event and they wanted to do it at noon on a Wednesday. And I said, who's going to come on noon on a Wednesday? But because they needed to do it during staff hours and they couldn't afford the overtime, or they couldn't afford comp time, or whatever it was, they created their own barriers. So it's really, you've got to think about what the families need in the family's time, because I don't want to give up my Saturday just for any organization if I'm not going to get anything out of it. But if I'm going to get something out of it, and I get to bring my kids, and I get to find, go home with stuff, then it's a better purpose. So
One of the things we've done is that the incentive we give our people, because we work with child support enforcement, we work with courts and whatever, but we want the parents to really have a desire to come. And that's why we say fatherhood is sacred, motherhood is sacred. Let me expand that a little bit. Native Americans believe in the sanctity of certain things like rivers and mountains and canyons, even animals like buffaloes and eagles. They understand the sacredness of those things, and Indians hold that very deeply. And we tell them, you know what? We have missed the mark as Native people. We've identified all these things to be sacred, which indeed they are sacred to us. But we have missed the mark big time, because two of the most sacred things on this earth is your role as a father and your role as a mother. When people really internalize that, not just up here, because if it's just up here, it's just words to people. They have to feel it here. When they really understand that their role is more sacred than anything else, they are self-motivated. They are even they inspire each other. And let me give an example. We say to them, let's say somehow we could get all the eagle feathers held by our great Native leaders throughout the centuries, Geronimo, Sitting Bulls, Tecumseh, all these great Native leaders for the past several hundred years, and somehow stack them in this room as high as we could. And then bring a child in, a young boy or girl, and say, these are all the sacred eagle feathers held by all of our great leaders, war leaders, spiritual leaders. And then you send in you bring your dad or your mom into the room and say, listen, would you rather have all these sacred eagle feathers, or would you rather have your fat old dad or mom? They will always, always pick their parents. When Native people understand that their role is indeed sacred, they are self-motivated. I mean, these people change quickly. And that's what we do. And people will come. I mean, they come. I mean, and we don't have to, yeah, we give them incentives, but we want them to feel the importance of their role as a parent.
Okay, does Eric get the last word? Or Tammy, did you have something quick?
No, I was just going to piggyback on just the whole idea of how we're using parents as conduits and natural leaders among parents to help build community around issues that pertain to their children. And I do think that is another path that is a very important part of what we're doing in our own community, which seems very necessary, again, given some of the issues of trust. And so I know informal networks or cultural groups it's not a new phenomenon, but it certainly is an important pathway to think about accessing when you're really trying to figure out how to reach those parents that may not be coming to the things that you're hosting or doing in concert with other organizations.
Eric, do you have something quick?
Last word. So I don't know if there will be time to answer, but Al, well, thank you to the committee, to the panel. Eric Deering, I'm a committee member. Al alluded earlier to the historical context in which government has subverted, discriminated, and harmed. And as the committee is considering making recommendations in part to government, I was just curious if you had more to share on successful strategies in this real historical context in working with government agencies as well.
Well, we tell the parents that, yes, there's no doubt that we had a tragic history of our forefathers, but we flip that on them. And we say, you know, when you really understand the sacrifices and the suffering that your forefathers went through, I mean, there's no doubt it's tragic. But once you really, if you just know about it, it's going to get you angry. You have to go beyond that. When you really understand the tragedy or the suffering your forefathers went through, you're going to understand you have much in common with them. They suffered and sacrificed so their kids would have a better opportunity and live a better life than they do. You have that same drive, fathers and mothers. And we tell them this. When you really understand, not know, but when you really understand what your forefathers went through, that should motivate you. That should inspire you to do better. How do you pay your forefathers back? How you pay them back is by improving on the present. You do everything you can to be the best father, the best husband, the best mother, the best wife you can possibly be. That's how you pay them back. And so we try to flip that on them because there's a big movement of historical trauma going on. And like I said, if you just know of the past, it's going to get you mad. You have to understand it to have you drive and motivate you to really improve yourself. So we take a little bit different twist to that than most people. I don't know if that answered your questions or not.
We really want to thank all of you for being on the committee, for speaking to the committee today. We greatly honor the work that you do, and we're going to keep your voices ringing in our head as we're working on the report. Thank you very much.
I do have a few brochures of our program if anybody wants them. They're here. Okay.